Welcome, Narendra Taneja, India's leading energy expert. Narendra, your outlook for India's continued appetite for this Russian oil gift?
Well, India's appetite is there. As far as Russia is concerned, it all depends on economics. I mean, if they continue to offer discounts, attractive discounts, then of course, India's refiners, whether public sector or the private sector, they will keep on importing. Is the price and is also the delivery. So these two aspects are important because it's nothing to do with politics or India's very close ties with Russia. It's all about economics. India has been saying this from day one because we used to import hardly 2% of our total requirement of crude from Russia, and then it started climbing up. And in the West, they said, oh, it's all about politics. No, it's nothing to do with politics. It's about economics. So now if you see the data of the last 1 month, actually imports have come down a little bit. The reason being that the discounts seems to be shrinking. And Indian refiners have made it very clear that if you continue to offer attractive discounts, we continue to buy from you. Because from day one, it has been about economics. At the same time, there are now other options available. Venezuela, we have just, signed contracts with Venezuela to import Venezuelan oil. And there's nothing new about it. We used to import a lot of oil from Venezuela before the sanctions. We are importing more from the US now. And of course, at the same time, traditional suppliers like Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, UAE, and above all, Iraq. So all that will continue. But as I said that in India today, we are consuming roughly 5.5 million barrels of oil every day. And bulk of that, close to 86%, is being imported. And so refiners are negotiating with Russians, they are negotiating with Saudi Aramco, Iraq, Venezuela, and a number of other suppliers. And if, for instance, we see that sanctions against Iran are being kind of diluted, I mean, not lifted, but if the West does really have big issues on countries like India buying from Iran, that might also be a new chapter starting very soon. We don't know that yet. But we are certainly not going to do it if the US and the West, our friends in the West, are dead against it. Then India is not going to do it. Because in Iran, geopolitical objectives are the same. But on coming back to Russia, what I see is that if discounts continue, attractive discounts, and the delivery mechanism, insurance mechanism, shipping, and so on and so forth, then I think India will continue to buy.
Of course, in 2023, the significant amount of Russian oil imports coming into India at these discounted rates certainly participated, helped the economic growth of the country, saw great performance last year. And now as we go into 24, of course, there's an election year with the elections in May, the parliamentary elections in May. Where does the outlook and the politics around the sanctions, the Russian oil, the relevance of it to the elections and the economic well-being of India in an election year?
Well, good question. You see, now, first of all, these G7 sanctions, India is nothing to do with those sanctions because India is an independent country and there are no sanctions against Russia, which means all corporate entities, whether in refining or in banking, I mean, they're free to do business with Russia, and which in fact they are doing. What Vandana mentioned is basically there are some banks, no problem in terms of importing crude oil from there, but sometimes there are some issues involving payment because Indians are very keen to pay in rupees and Russians have problem in accepting rupees. And Russians have been suggesting, why don't you use Chinese currency via some banks in Dubai, and Indians, Indian refiners are reluctant to do that. We don't want to use. We have used Chinese currency couple of times, but actually we are reluctant to do that. So it's basically all about that. But as far as India is concerned, sanctions.
What is the difference in the currency issue? I mean, why rupees, not dollar? Why not the Russian ruble? What's the different dynamics around the currencies?
Well, dynamics is very simple. You see, Indian rupee is not fully convertible. It's convertible on capital account. Even Chinese currency, yuan, is not fully convertible. So that's why, which means that you have to go via Dubai, pay in maybe in the UAE currency, and then in turn, that's kind of, exchange with the Chinese currency. So it's a more complicated route. But India is not happy with it because for us, UAE currency is as good as dollar because it's pegged against dollar. So we are very happy to use the UAE currency and then transfer that to Russia. But now in some systems, there are some problems because they are tightening, the G7 countries are tightening the financial kind of systems internally, and that's creating some complex. So with these two cargoes, which for instance couldn't really deliver oil to Indian refiners and had to go to China, this basically nothing to do with any Indian policy. It's all about the payment. But that's being sorted out, I hope. Our foreign minister was in Russia just a few days ago for full 5 days. And among other things, this was on the table. So, and also to send a message, full 5 days in Russia means that India, for us, Russia's, strategic autonomy is important. India is extremely uncomfortable if Russia slips into the Chinese lap 100%, because we want Russia to stay strategically autonomous, independent from China's influence. That's in our interest. And in fact, we think that's also in the interest of the West. Otherwise, Chinese will be sitting on the borders with Europe and European Union. So they have to, so that's the view. But coming back to India, economy is doing extremely well. And we are growing in the region of 7%, and we will continue to grow in that region, 6.8 to maybe 7.3 in 2024. Election year, but this is only actually a good economy, good policy, only helping the economy and therefore helping actually politics. And we don't know, it's very difficult to predict, and I don't want to make any kind of prediction, but the chances are that BJP ruling party will return to power.
Well, all the polling indicates a landslide victory for the BJP.
Well, as I said, that most likely the Prime Minister Narendra Modi will return to power, with the third term, because he's doing well. The economy is doing very well. We are a democracy. I mean, unlike what we are hearing from the United States, India, the story is quite the opposite in the sense, very stable political landscape, very stable economic landscape. And therefore, in India, if you come to Delhi, Bombay, Chennai, Bangalore, everybody is talking about how fast India can become a developed economy, and the target is
there's no sensitivity in India regarding the G7 oil price cap. It's a non-factor. If the price is right, you'll buy it.
Well, if you come to Delhi or Bombay and ask G7 sanctions, probably people are going to say, "What did you say? What exactly is
who is the G7?" That might be that might be the black swan of 2024. I wanted to get your sort of wider view of India's year ahead. You mentioned there the 5 days for the foreign minister to be in Russia might signal the growing view that maybe the war in Europe is coming to an end. The Indian elections in May. The outlook for the overarching year ahead, the BRICS, what's the outcome for the BRICS going into this new year with Saudi Arabia now joining? So a wider view for India on the year ahead.
Well, good question. You see, if you look at the landscape, let's say from Israel to Japan and then down to Australia and New Zealand, the region that's very important for us. There are two major worries. One is, of course, the Middle East, and we hope that, things don't escalate, that the US would be able to exercise, pressure on Israel, sufficient pressure to basically contain these things so that it doesn't escalate, attacks on Hezbollah bases and all that, making India a little bit uncomfortable. And also what happens to those, those people in Gaza. If we start getting visuals where people are starving or there is a famine and all that, that's going to complicate, India's, view as far as the Middle East is concerned. We want to see stability and we want to see that it does escalate. Let's not forget that India and Middle East, GCC countries are very closely integrated economically. As we talk, in fact, the UAE president is in India and was just received by our Prime Minister. So, but economically speaking, the biggest worry is China, in the sense that, we may not have great relations with China, but we want China to continue to grow because it's in our interest. I mean, our view is that China is not growing at 5% GDP as they claim. Our sense is that they're probably growing in the region of about 2%. And if that is the case, and at the same time, we see that the new policies are such that they're not going to attract much investments, whether in whatever sectors. And the focus seems to be more on strengthening the Communist Party and not the People's Republic of China. If that is the case, Chinese economy is going to suffer. And our sense is in 2024, many of us in India, we think that in 2024, China GDP will actually move southward. And whatever they may claim, that we
It
are
moves
growing at 5%.
southward, it will actually
Yeah.
contract.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And also in terms of the perception of China being a very kind of economy which is going to catch up with the United States very soon. We don't think that's going to happen, because China actually, instead of moving northward, it started going southward in practically on, if you look at the matrix and all matrix. So there's an area of worry, because it might have its own economic and political implications for the entire region, including India.